There was a season in my life when I genuinely thought God had forgotten me, not because I stopped praying, not because I stopped believing, but because nothing seemed to be moving. During my university days, something happened that at the time felt like a punishment I could not understand. I was given an extra year in school because of a missing practical script. I had done the practical. I had written the examination. I had done everything I believed I was supposed to do. But somehow that one missing script changed everything. My mates graduated, I didn't. They moved forward and I felt like I had been left behind. I remember what those days felt like. It wasn't just about school anymore. It began to affect how I saw myself. I felt stagnant. I felt embarrassed. I cried, and sometimes I would look around and wonder, God, why me? My mother was angry with me. She said things that hurt me deeply. And honestly, there were moments when I didn't even know how to explain what was happening because I didn't fully understand it myself. I had prayed, I had studied, I had done the practical. I had written the exam, so why was I still there? Why did everybody else seem to be moving while I was being forced to start another year? I thought I was experiencing a setback. I thought I was losing time. I thought God had forgotten me, but I didn't know something then. What I called a setback was actually a season of preparation. When I came back to continue my studies, I made a decision. I told God, Lord, help me. I don't understand what is happening, but I need you to help me. And something changed. That new season brought opportunities I never expected. God began to lead me in ways I didn't see coming. He opened doors. He connected me to experiences. He allowed me to learn things I probably would not have learned if I had graduated at the same time as everyone else. And eventually, I graduated. But the beautiful part of the story didn't end with graduation. Years later, I realized something. What I learned during that extra year, the very season I had cried over, the season I had considered wasted, the season I wished would disappear, became part of what helped me get a job. Think about that. The thing I thought was delaying me was preparing me. The year I thought I had lost was actually teaching me something I would need later. And suddenly, I understood. God wasn't punishing me. God was preparing me. I just couldn't see it while I was inside the process. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you're looking at your life and wondering, God, when will I get married? When will I get that job? When will my business grow? When will I finally move out? When will my prayers become answers? When will my life begin to look like the life I imagined? And perhaps the hardest part isn't even waiting. The hardest part is watching other people receive what you've been praying for. Someone gets married while you're still single. Someone gets the job while you're still submitting applications. Someone is building a business while you're still trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. Someone is celebrating an answered prayer while you're sitting with an unanswered one. And if you're not careful, you can start believing that their progress means God has forgotten you. But it doesn't. Their season is not your season. Their timeline is not your timeline. And their blessing is not evidence that God has abandoned you. Sometimes God will allow you to stay in a season longer than you expected because there is something He is developing in you that you cannot yet see. There are seasons of planting, there are seasons of waiting, there are seasons of learning, there are seasons of healing, there are seasons of preparation, and then there are seasons of harvest. The problem is that we often want the harvest without going through the preparation. We want the marriage, but we don't want the character God is trying to build in us. We want the platform, but we don't want the discipline required to handle influence. We want the job, but we don't want the skills God is trying to develop. We want the blessing, but we don't want the maturity required to carry it. And sometimes God loves us enough to delay what we are asking for until we are ready to handle it. That is a hard truth. Because preparation doesn't always feel like preparation. Sometimes preparation feels like rejection. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like being overlooked. Sometimes it feels like doors closing. Sometimes it feels like starting over. Sometimes it feels like watching everyone move ahead while you're standing still. But what if you're not actually standing still? What if God is working underneath the surface? Think about a seed. When you plant a seed, there is a period where nothing appears to be happening. You look at the ground and see nothing. You water it. You wait. You check again, still nothing. But underneath that soil, something is happening. Roots are forming. Growth is taking place where your eyes cannot see it. And sometimes your life is like that. You don't see the progress because God is doing something beneath the surface. You don't see the roots. You don't see the strength He is building. You don't see the wisdom He is developing. You don't see the connections He is preparing. You don't see the doors He is arranging. You only see the waiting. And because you only see the waiting, you assume nothing is happening. But God sees what you cannot see. There is a verse that I wish I had understood more deeply during that season of my life. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." Notice what the verse says. It doesn't say those who wait will be forgotten. It doesn't say those who wait will remain stuck forever. It says those who wait upon the Lord will be renewed. Sometimes waiting isn't about God doing nothing. Sometimes waiting is about God strengthening you for what comes next. My extra year wasn't the end of my story. It was a chapter. And perhaps what you're going through right now is not the end of your story either. It's a chapter. Maybe you're in a preparation season. And preparation seasons can be painful because you know where you want to go, but you don't understand why God hasn't taken you there yet. But please hear me. Don't despise the season just because it doesn't look like the promise. Don't call yourself forgotten because you're waiting. Don't call yourself a failure because your timeline looks different. Don't assume God has said no simply because He hasn't said yes yet. There are things God can build in you in the waiting that He cannot build in you in a hurry. Patience, character, wisdom, discipline, faith, dependence on Him. And sometimes, before God changes your circumstances, He changes you. Before He gives you the opportunity, He prepares your capacity. Before He gives you the relationship, He prepares your heart. Before He gives you the platform, He prepares your character. Before He gives you the blessing, He teaches you how to carry it. And that is why you must not give up in the middle of your preparation. Because you may be looking at your life thinking, nothing is happening. But one day you may look back and say, now I understand. That's what happened to me. I didn't understand it then. I cried through it. I questioned it. I hated feeling behind. But today I can look back and say, God knew what He was doing. The season I wanted to escape became part of the preparation for where I am today. So if you're in a season that doesn't make sense right now, breathe, cry if you need to, pray, tell God exactly how you feel. You don't have to pretend that waiting isn't painful. But while you're crying, keep trusting. While you're waiting, keep growing. While you're praying, keep preparing. Because God can be working in a place where you see nothing happening. And maybe one day you'll look back at this very season and realize it wasn't a delay. It was preparation. You may not understand the season now, but that doesn't mean God doesn't understand it. He sees the beginning and the end at the same time. So don't give up on God because you don't understand His process. Trust Him in the middle. Because sometimes the season that makes you cry today becomes the testimony that makes you smile tomorrow. And this is only chapter 1. Because if God is using this season to prepare you, there is something He is developing in you right now. Maybe nobody knows how tired you are. People see you smiling, but they don't see the nights you stare at the ceiling wondering when your life will finally change. They see you showing up. They don't see how many times you've cried before showing up. They see your strength. They don't see the moments when you whispered, God, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Maybe that's what makes a preparation season so difficult. You are expected to keep going while you don't even know what you're going toward. You pray, but the answer doesn't come. You apply, but the opportunity doesn't come. You love, but the relationship doesn't work. You try again, but somehow you end up disappointed again. And after a while, you start asking yourself questions you never thought you would ask. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe God doesn't want this for me. Maybe I'm too late. Maybe everybody else has figured life out except me. And that last one can hurt deeply. Because sometimes the hardest thing about waiting isn't waiting itself. It's watching other people get what you are still praying for. You scroll through social media and somebody is getting engaged. Somebody is announcing a new job. Somebody is buying a house. Somebody is celebrating a business breakthrough. Somebody is holding their newborn baby. And you are sitting there thinking, God, what about me? You celebrate them. You genuinely do, but somewhere inside your heart there is still a quiet question. When will it be my turn? And if you've ever felt that way, I want you to know something. You are not a bad person for feeling tired. You are human. Sometimes faith doesn't look like smiling all day. Sometimes faith looks like crying and still praying. Sometimes faith looks like saying, God, I don't understand you right now, but I still choose you. That is faith too. Because trusting God doesn't mean you never feel afraid. It means fear doesn't get the final word. And maybe God is using this season to teach you something you couldn't learn in comfort. Maybe He's teaching you patience because you've always wanted everything immediately. Maybe He's teaching you dependence because you've spent years trying to control everything yourself. Maybe He's teaching you identity because you've allowed your relationship status, career, money, achievements, or people's opinions to determine your worth. Maybe He's teaching you that your life is not behind simply because it doesn't look like someone else's. Think about the woman waiting for marriage. She may be tired of being asked, so when are you getting married? She smiles, she laughs, she changes the subject. But deep down, she sometimes goes home and cries because she doesn't understand why love seems to come easily for everyone else. Maybe she has prayed for a husband so many times that she has stopped telling people about it. Maybe she has attended weddings where she genuinely rejoiced for the bride, then went home and cried because she wished someone would choose her too. But what if this season isn't God punishing her? What if God is preparing her to recognize healthy love instead of accepting anything just because she's lonely? What if the waiting is teaching her that being alone is better than being with someone who destroys her peace? What if God is teaching her not to confuse attention with love? Not every person who wants you is assigned to you. And sometimes God will allow you to wait because He knows what you would settle for if you became desperate. That is why preparation can feel like denial. God may be protecting you from something you are begging Him to give you, and you may not understand that until later. Maybe you're waiting for a job. You've sent applications, you've attended interviews, you've heard, we'll get back to you, and they never did. You've watched people with less experience get opportunities while you are still wondering what is wrong with you. But what if God isn't wasting your waiting? What if He's preparing you for an environment where your gifts will actually matter? What if the rejection is redirecting you? What if the closed door is saving you from walking into a place that would have broken you? We don't always recognize protection when it looks like disappointment. Sometimes God's not yet feels like rejection until we discover what He was protecting us from. Maybe you're waiting for your business to grow. You've been consistent. You've prayed, you've tried, you've failed, you've started again. And there are days when you look at your numbers and wonder if anyone even notices what you're doing. But maybe this quiet season is teaching you how to build without applause. Because if you can only continue when people are watching, you may not be ready for the season when everybody is watching. God may be developing your discipline before He develops your visibility. He may be building your character before He builds your platform. He may be strengthening your roots before He allows people to see your fruit. And that's why you cannot measure God's work by what is visible. Some of the most important things God does in us happen quietly. Nobody applauds you for becoming patient. Nobody celebrates you for learning self-control. Nobody throws a party because you finally stopped chasing people who don't value you. Nobody sees the battle you fought when you chose prayer instead of giving up, but God sees it. And sometimes the greatest evidence that God is preparing you is not what He's giving you. It's who you are becoming. Look at yourself. Maybe you're not where you want to be. But are you the same person you were 2 years ago? Maybe you don't have the relationship yet. But have you learned to love yourself without needing someone else to validate you? Maybe you don't have the job yet. But have you gained skills you didn't have before? Maybe your business hasn't taken off. But have you become more disciplined? Maybe your prayer hasn't been answered. But have you become closer to God? Then something is happening. You may not have the result yet, but you have growth. And growth is not nothing. Sometimes we become so obsessed with the destination that we fail to notice the person God is creating on the way there. My own story taught me that. I thought that extra year was stealing something from me, but it was giving me something I didn't know I needed. And perhaps that's what your season is doing too. Maybe the thing you are calling a delay is developing your endurance. Maybe the loneliness is developing your discernment. Maybe the rejection is developing your resilience. Maybe the silence is developing your ability to hear God. Maybe the closed door is teaching you not to force doors God didn't open. Maybe the waiting is teaching you how to trust without evidence. And that is one of the hardest forms of faith. Trusting God when you cannot see what He's doing. Trusting Him when your prayer hasn't changed your circumstances. Trusting Him when your friends don't understand why you're still waiting. Trusting Him when you don't have an explanation. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Notice that it says, lean not unto thine own understanding, because sometimes your understanding will tell you you're behind, you're forgotten, it's never going to happen, everybody is moving except you, but God sees beyond what you can see. You see today, God sees tomorrow, you see the closed door. God sees the door you haven't reached yet, you see the waiting. God sees the preparation, you see the tears, God sees the testimony. So please don't make a permanent conclusion about your life based on a temporary season. You are not your current circumstance. You are not your unanswered prayer. You are not the rejection email. You are not the relationship that ended. You are not the opportunity you missed. You are not the year you think you wasted. You are not behind. You are becoming, and becoming can be uncomfortable. A caterpillar doesn't look beautiful while it's transforming. There is a hidden stage. There is a quiet stage. There is a stage where nobody can see what is happening. But the fact that nobody can see the transformation doesn't mean the transformation isn't happening. Maybe you're in your cocoon season, and I know it feels lonely. I know it feels slow. I know sometimes you wish God would just hurry up and show you what he's doing. But don't rush out of a season God is using to prepare you. Because if you leave the process too early, you may arrive at the promise without the capacity to sustain it. So keep learning, keep praying, keep becoming, keep showing up, keep trusting. And when you have to cry, cry. God is not intimidated by your tears. When you are tired, tell him. When you're confused, talk to him. When you're disappointed, bring that disappointment to him. You don't have to pretend before God. He already knows what is in your heart. But after you've cried, get up again. After you've prayed, take the next step. After you've been disappointed, don't stop believing that God can still surprise you. Because your current chapter is not the whole book. And maybe, just maybe, the very thing you are crying about today will become the thing you will one day look back on and say, now I understand why God allowed me to wait. I know that feeling because I've lived it. I thought I was being delayed. I didn't know I was being prepared. And if God could turn my painful season into part of my testimony, he can do something beautiful with yours too. So don't give up in the middle of the story. You haven't seen the ending yet. And sometimes the most beautiful part of God's work begins after you've stopped trying to understand everything and simply decided to trust him. Because God is not finished with you, not even close. Can I tell you something, friend? I also suffered. I waited for admission too, and I can tell you that it's not funny at all, but please don't give up on God. You may be waiting for a sign that the season is changing. Maybe you've been asking God, how much longer? And honestly, I don't know how long your season will last. I don't know when the job will come. I don't know when the marriage will happen. I don't know when the business will grow. I don't know when the door you've been praying about will finally open. But I know this, your responsibility is not to control the timing. Your responsibility is to trust God while he prepares you, because there is something you can do while you wait. You can prepare. Don't spend your waiting season staring at the door so much that you forget to prepare for what's behind it. If you're praying for a job, build your skills. If you're praying for marriage, allow God to work on your character. If you're praying for a business, learn. If you're praying for financial increase, learn how to manage what you already have. If you're praying for a deeper relationship with God, don't wait until life becomes easier before you seek him. Start now. Because sometimes we ask God for a new season while refusing to become the person that new season requires. We say, Lord, give me more. And God may be saying, let me teach you how to carry what you're asking for. That can be uncomfortable, because preparation often requires change. It requires you to let go of habits that feel familiar. It requires you to stop making excuses. It requires you to forgive. It requires you to become disciplined. It requires you to stop chasing people who don't value you. It requires you to stop comparing your life to somebody else's. And sometimes it requires you to become comfortable with being alone. Because God cannot always build something new in you while you're desperately holding on to what he is trying to remove. There are things you are praying for that require a different version of you. And maybe that's why God hasn't released them yet. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he loves you too much to give you something that could destroy you in your current state. Think about it. A child can want a driver's license, but the parent knows the child isn't ready to drive. The desire may be genuine, the excitement may be real, but readiness matters. And sometimes we are asking God for things we genuinely desire while God is looking at us and saying, "Not yet, I'm still preparing you." That "not yet" can hurt, but it can also be love. So while you're waiting, don't waste the season. Become, grow, learn, heal, pray, build, forgive, read, prepare. Let God work on the parts of you that nobody sees. Because one day people may celebrate the result without knowing what it cost you to become ready for it. They may see the marriage, but they won't see the years you spent learning what healthy love looks like. They may see the successful business, but they won't see the nights you studied when nobody believed in you. They may see the promotion, but they won't see the years you spent developing yourself. They may see the testimony, but they won't see the tears that came before it. And that's okay. Because some seasons are not meant to be explained to everyone. Some seasons are meant to be lived with God. There is a reason a seed doesn't become a tree overnight. Growth takes time. And if God is growing something in you, don't be ashamed of the process. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just need to keep taking the next step. One prayer at a time, one lesson at a time. One day at a time, one act of obedience at a time. And please don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. You don't know what they went through to get there. You don't know their journey. You don't know their struggles. You don't know the prayers they prayed when nobody was watching. You don't know the battles they fought. So stop using someone else's life as a measuring stick for yours. God is writing your story differently, and different does not mean forgotten. Let me tell you something else. Sometimes preparation looks like losing people. There are people you thought would be in your life forever who may not make it into your next season. And that can hurt. You may spend months asking, "Why did God allow this relationship to end?" But later, you may realize that the relationship was attached to a version of you that God was trying to outgrow. Not every goodbye is a tragedy. Some goodbyes are preparation. Some closed doors are protection. Some endings are redirections. Some disappointments are divine interruptions. You may not understand them today, but give God time. Because there are things you will only understand when you look backward. That's what happened to me. When I was in that extra year at university, I couldn't see the future. All I could see was my mates graduating without me. All I could see was my mother's disappointment. All I could see was another year added to my journey. I couldn't see the opportunities that were coming. I couldn't see what I was going to learn. I couldn't see that one day I would look back and realize that the very season I hated had prepared me for something I needed. That's the strange thing about God's process. You often understand it after you survive it. You don't always see the purpose while you're in the pain, but one day you may look back and say, "God, now I understand." And maybe that's going to be your story too. Maybe the season you're crying about today will become the season you thank God for tomorrow. Maybe the delay will become part of your testimony. Maybe the unanswered prayer will become evidence that God knew better. Maybe the closed door will make sense when you finally walk through the right one. So if you're waiting right now, don't lose yourself in the waiting. Live, laugh, learn, serve, pray, build, love people, take care of yourself, keep becoming. Don't put your entire life on pause because one prayer hasn't been answered yet. You can desire marriage and still enjoy your life. You can desire a better job and still be grateful for where you are. You can desire financial breakthrough and still appreciate what you have. You can desire a new season without hating your current one, because gratitude doesn't mean you've stopped believing for more. It means you're trusting God with what you have while believing Him for what is next. And when you don't know what to do, go back to God, not social media, not comparison, not desperation. God. Psalm 37:7 says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him." Rest, that's powerful, because sometimes we think waiting means doing nothing, but biblical waiting is different. It is trusting. It is preparing. It is obeying. It is continuing to believe even when the evidence has not yet changed. And maybe today you need to hear this. God has not forgotten you. The silence doesn't mean abandonment. The delay doesn't mean denial. The closed door doesn't mean your story is over. The waiting doesn't mean nothing is happening. And the fact that your life doesn't look like someone else's doesn't mean you're behind. You are still in God's hands. And if He brought you this far, He is not going to abandon you in the middle of your story. So take a deep breath. Release the pressure to have everything figured out. Release the need to know exactly when. Release the comparison. Release the fear that you're running out of time. And tell God, "Lord, I trust your process," even if you don't understand it. Lord, I trust your timing, even if you're tired of waiting. Lord, prepare me, even if preparation is uncomfortable. Lord, make me ready for whatever you are preparing for me. Because maybe the question isn't, God, why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe the better question is, God, what are you trying to build in me while I wait? That question can change everything. Because instead of wasting the season wishing it away, you begin to use it. Instead of asking, when will my life begin? You start realizing that your life is already happening. This season matters too. This day matters too. This version of you matters too. Don't despise where you are simply because you're not where you want to be. You are becoming, and becoming takes time. So if today you're crying because you feel delayed, I want you to remember my story. I thought God had forgotten me. I thought that extra year was a setback. I thought everyone was moving forward while I was standing still. But God was working behind the scenes. And today I can look back and see what I couldn't see then. The delay was not the end. The extra year was not wasted. The pain was not meaningless. God was preparing me, and maybe that's what He's doing with you. You may not see it, you may not feel it, you may not understand it, but keep trusting. Keep praying, keep preparing, keep walking. Because one day you may look back at this season with tears in your eyes, not because you're still hurting, but because you finally understand why God made you wait. And when that day comes, you may say, now I understand. God didn't forget me, He was preparing me. So don't give up, your story is still being written. And if this season has taught you anything, let it teach you this. God's timing may not always make sense to you, but God's process can still be trusted. Your waiting is not wasted. Your tears are not wasted. Your prayers are not wasted. Your preparation is not wasted. God is working, even behind the scenes. And when the time is right, you will understand why He needed you to become who you are becoming today. If this message spoke directly to your heart, don't just listen and move on. Take a moment and talk to God. Tell Him exactly where you are. Tell Him what you're waiting for. Tell Him what hurts. And then tell Him, Father, I don't understand this season, but I trust you with it. And if you know someone who is tired of waiting, someone who feels forgotten, someone who feels like everyone else is moving forward while they are standing still, send this message to them. Maybe they don't need another explanation. Maybe they just need to hear, God has not forgotten you. He is preparing you. And when you finally enter the season you've been praying for, may you look back and realize that every tear, every delay, every closed door, every lonely night, and every moment you thought God was silent was part of a story He was carefully writing all along. You just couldn't see the next page yet. God who remembered me will remember you too. There's one thing I know, and that is, the love of God faileth not.